Hello, you're listening to the Servant of God, Pastor Bangi.
We'll read from the book of Psalms, Psalm 37, from verse 7. It says, "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. Refrain from anger and turn from wrath. Do not fret, it leads only to evil. For those who are evil will be destroyed, but those who hope in the Lord will inherit the land. A little while, and the wicked will be no more. Though you look for them, they will not be found. But the meek will inherit the land and enjoy peace and prosperity." That's verse 11. It says, the meek will inherit the land and enjoy peace and prosperity. Last time we're looking at what it means to be meek. Remember, meek means that you have power, but you are not using it for your own benefit. You are not using it to defend yourself. And we said that the reason why the Bible could say Moses was the meekest of the people on the earth was not because he was the gentlest, generally speaking. There may have been people who were more gentle than Moses. But Moses was a man that had power with God. Moses could ask God for almost anything and get it. I said almost anything. Moses had access to the throne of God. He could meet the Lord on the mountains. He could meet the Lord, in the tabernacle. Yet, despite the fact that he could do this, he did not use his power to enrich himself. He did not use his power to defend himself. Many times people will speak against him, which was when the Lord told us that he was the meekest. So the meek man, I'm just reiterating what we have said again and again, is the person that has power, but is not using it for his own benefit. Essentially, is the person that has power under control. Now, he said the meek will inherit the land and enjoy peace and prosperity. Let's bear that in mind. Let's talk a little bit more about this blessing of the meek. If you read this context we read in Psalm 37 now, it says, "Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him." Now, there are those who go on their own way. They don't wait for the Lord, and they seem to prosper in it. And some of them use wicked schemes. He said, don't fret because of these people. He said, don't get angry. Don't worry about anything, essentially. That's what he was saying. He now said, the meek will inherit the land and delight themselves in abundant prosperity. They will enjoy peace and prosperity. When people are struggling, when they are going out of their way, there's something they are looking for, and that is the land. They are looking for an inheritance. They are looking for a blessing. Now, he said the meek will get it without doing that. If I have an example to use, and that's the man David. From the time Samuel anointed him, he grew so much before he mounted the throne. He was anointed as a little boy. Now, why I emphasize the fact that he was growing was that there was a time this meekness was not found in him. And God sent somebody, to go and teach it to him. And that's the person Abigail. The story is in 1 Samuel chapter 25. What happened was that it was time for some celebration, what we'll call harvest, For them, it was sheep shearing. So the farmers were taking in a lot of their produce, and they usually will have a celebration. So David and his men were there, and David sent his men to go and meet Nabal. You know the story of Nabal. To ask Nabal to send them some things. And he told them, look, we've been good to you. And really, they had acted as guards for his shepherds when they would be in the field. Nobody could steal from them as long as David's men were around them. But for whatever reason, maybe Nabal did not like David. Okay, everybody knew David that time, if you know. Everybody knew David. The whole of Israel knew the story of David. They knew Saul was running after him and trying to kill him. And they already heard that he was anointed by Samuel to be king in Israel after Saul. But of course, the Bible makes it clear, if you're going to read the context, Nabal had bad manners. He had a bad mouth. He had no respect for persons. When David's servants got to the house of Nabal and gave him the message from David, Nabal said, who is this David? I've heard of so many servants who are running away from their master these days. Now, which was a jab, if you understand my point? It was a jab he threw at David because he knew that David ran away from Saul. There are so many servants who are running from their masters these days. Why should I now give my food to one servant somewhere who thinks he's somebody? Those men took it back to David, and David got very angry. Then, you know the story? Please, you can go and read the story in 1 Samuel chapter 25. So David was so angry, he decided that he was going to wipe out the whole household of Nabal, at least all the men inside there. And he would take those goods by force, the thing he didn't want to give. But then the men of Nabal went and told his wife, Abigail. She was a very wise woman. So Abigail quickly took measures, packed food and stuff, and went to go and meet David on the way. Of course, David was heading towards their encampment also. Now she got to where David was and began to intercede. He said, pardon your servant, my lord, and let me speak to you. Please pay no attention, my lord, to that wicked man Nabal. He's just like his name. His name means fool, and folly goes with him. Now she continued to speak until David was placated, and David decided not to do anything. Now, where I'm going about this whole thing is that this was David's lesson in meekness. David at this point was not meek until Abigail came and gave him that lesson in meekness. And you see what David said in verse 32. David said to Abigail, "Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who has sent you today to meet me." It was God that sent Abigail. "May you be blessed for your good judgment and for keeping me from bloodshed this day and from avenging myself with my own hands." That's meekness. Having the power but refusing to use it to avenge himself. That's meekness. David said God has sent Abigail essentially as a prophetess to him to instruct him in the way of the Lord. The other prophet Samuel had instructed him, if you read between the lines in the scriptures, not to have his hands stained with the blood of Saul so as to make himself king in place of Saul. That is, even if you are given the opportunity, don't use it. Allow God to establish you on the throne. If you see what happened to David at the end of the day, when he had been instructed in meekness, when he understood not to touch Saul, when Abigail came and explained to him, you don't avenge yourself. Of course, she came with her supplicatory attitude. What happened? David went away and did not avenge himself. So we've seen two examples here where David did not avenge himself or do anything with his power that God has given him to make himself king. What did he do in the case of Saul? He spent much time running. Twice he had the opportunity to kill Saul, but both times he spared the life of Saul. First, cutting only the edge of his robe. The other time, taking his spear and water jug as proof that indeed he could have killed Saul. As a result, what did he inherit? That's where I'm going. The meek, the Bible says, we inherit the land. David never had to fight by himself to become king in Israel. Please bear that in mind. Time will not allow us to read all these stories, but if you can go to 1 Chronicles chapter 11, you hear of the mighty men of David. If you go to 1 Chronicles chapter 12, please take time out to read this portion of the scriptures. You will see that people gathered by themselves to make David king in Israel. The Bible says that in 1 Chronicles chapter 12, it said, "Then all Israel gathered to David at Hebron and said, Behold, we are your bone and flesh. In times past, even when Saul was king, you were the one who led out and brought Israel in. And the Lord your God said to you, You shall shepherd my people Israel, and you shall be prince over my people Israel." The Bible says in verse 3, "So all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and David made a covenant with them in Hebron before the Lord. And they anointed David king over Israel, according to the word of the Lord through Samuel." He did not have to do it himself. The people sought him out. Read verse 9. In the process of time, the Bible says that David became greater and greater, for the Lord of hosts was with him. All right? Just keep reading. In that chapter 12, now the Bible listed those who came to David while he was still restricted because of Saul, the son of Kish. And they were among the mighty men who helped him in war. The Bible says in 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 2, "They were equipped with bows, using both the right hand and the left hand to sling stones and to throw arrows from the bow. They were Saul's king's men from Benjamin." That is, even people of Saul, they came to make David king. And the Bible says, day by day, in verse 22, men came to David to help him until there was a great army like the army of God. If you go further down, I'm just reading a few verses, okay, to help us understand. In verse 38, it says, "And all these, being men of war, who could draw up in battle formation, came to Hebron with a perfect heart to make David king over all Israel. And all the rest also of Israel were of one mind to make David king." Why have I read all of this? You will notice that the Bible says, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." The things that people are struggling for, the Bible says, God will raise people who will, by themselves, struggle, work hard, put in the energy to drop the things into the lap of the person who is pleasing to God.
We trust you are blessed by that short teaching. For more messages, books, and other materials, please visit our website, pastor.ng. Don't forget to share these resources with others. God bless you.